The world of Lexia was, at its core, a meticulously documented legal framework. Every quest, every monster encounter, every spell cast, every item looted, all were governed by the omnipresent system's intricate terms and conditions of adventuring. TCA. These TCA, spanning millions of digital pages, were updated daily, their clauses and subclauses defining the very fabric of reality. Adventurers, too busy fighting goblins or delving into dungeons, rarely read beyond the quest objectives. They lived by the sword, by magic, by brawn. They accepted the system's rules as absolute and immutable. Most citizens of Lexia were assigned combat classes, warrior, mage, rogue, etc., or crafting classes. Their stats reflected their physical prowess or arcane aptitude. But there existed a peculiar, almost universally derided class, Litigator. These individuals, with their abysmal combat stats and focus on intellect and wisdom, were seen as useless bureaucratic nuisances. Forever poring over dusty data scrolls, our protagonist Kaelen was a Tier 1 litigator. His stats were a joke, STR4, DEX6, Int 20, WIS 18, CHR 10. He possessed no combat skills, save for a pathetic evasive maneuver passive that sometimes allowed him to trip and fall out of danger's way. His primary skill, Sight Precedent, active, allowed him to recall a relevant clause from the TCA, but most adventurers just laughed at him. Kaelen's life was one of quiet, dignified desperation. He ran a small, struggling legal office in the bustling adventurers' district of Port Lexia, filled with data scrolls and holographic legal texts. His only companion was a perpetually exasperated but fiercely loyal Tier 1 paralegal NPC named Lyra, whose combat skills were marginally better than Kaelen's. One fateful morning, a burly Tier 8 barbarian named Growth burst into Kaelen's office. Grok was a legend, a one-man wrecking crew known for his berserker rages. Now, however, he was utterly distraught, holding a system interface that flashed. Quest failed. Raid on Goblin Keep client. GROK. Penalty: 10,000 gold fine, 24-hour stun debuff. The goblins. Gurk roared, slamming his axe carefully. Avoiding Kaelen's antique desk, a testament to his innate axe mastery not to damage property. They sprung a trap. Unfair. I lost my best axe. My honor. Kaelen, initially intimidated, took a closer look at the quest log. Gurk had indeed walked into a classic pit trap. Most adventurers would accept it as a hazard of the job, but Kaelen's Sight Precedent skill flared. Gurk, Kaelen began, pushing up his spectacles. Did you read the fine print on the Raid on Goblin Keep quest contract? Gurk grunted. Me smash, not read? Kaelen sighed. I thought so. Here, under Section 4, Subclause 7, Paragraph B, all quest-giver-initiated dungeon traps must be clearly marked with visible signage adhering to Guild Safety Protocol 34 Alpha. Subsection 2, pertaining to subterranean hazards. Gurk stared, dumbfounded. Signage. Precisely, Kaelen affirmed, a spark in his eye. Is there a sign? Gurk paused. No, just dark. Then the goblins are in violation of Guild Safety Protocol 34 Alpha. Therefore, the quest giver, in this case, the Goblin Chief, is liable for damages incurred, and the quest failure penalty is invalid. Gurk's jaw dropped. You can sue goblins? Kaelen smiled. Grok, in Lexia, everyone is subject to the system's terms and conditions, even goblins, especially goblins. Kaelen filed a formal complaint system recognized against the Goblin Chief for violation of adventuring safety protocols and negligent trap deployment. The system, in its infinite bureaucratic wisdom, mandated an arbitration hearing minor offenses. The location: a small, neutral dungeon chamber, guarded by automated system enforcers, neutral, non-combat NPCs designed to maintain order. Grok, despite his immense strength, was terrified. But it's just a dungeon. I fight them. Precisely. Gurk, but in an arbitration we fight with words, with clauses, with evidence, Kaelen replied, his int and whis soaring. His Sight Precedent skill was humming, recalling sections of the TCA he hadn't even known existed. The Goblin Chief, a grizzled Tier 6 hobgoblin warlord named KRAG, arrived with his own legal counsel, a scrawny, terrified goblin shaman. Tier 2, minor legal lore, who mostly communicated in frantic squeaks. Crag just grunted, clutching his rusty cleaver. Kaelen presented his case, citing the specific TCA clauses. He even used a new skill, Present Exhibit Active, to project a holographic image of the unmarked pit trap. The Goblin Shaman, after much squeaking, tried to argue customary dungeon practices and implicit acceptance of risk by adventurer. However, countered with Cite Precedent, Section 7, Subclause 2, Paragraph D, explicit consent for unmarked hazards, EUCUH, requires prior written waiver from the adventurer. Did Grok sign a Yucca waiver, Shaman? The shaman looked terrified. Crag simply growled. The system enforcers, as neutral arbiters, rendered their judgment. Verdict: Guilty Goblin Chief Krag. Penalty: 10,000 gold restitution 2 K. 24-hour prison debuff Goblin Stockade for violation of guild protocol. Crag roared in outrage, but the enforcers, their glowing eyes flashing, activated a stun debuff and dragged him away to his own stockade. K stared at the holographic notification of 10,000 gold being deposited into his account. Then, at his fully restored axe system-mandated compensation for lost property, he looked at Kaelen with awe. You smash with words. New class designation. Tier 2, Adventurer's Advocate. Kaelen. Rep. Plus 1,000 Adventuring Guild new skill. Exploit loophole active. Description: allows the user to identify and leverage minor inconsistencies in systemic rules or quest contracts. Moderate mana cost. Kaelen was no longer just a litigator. He was an adventurer's advocate, and he had just shown a barbarian how to legally defeat a hobgoblin warlord. His office, once empty, was about to become very busy. Word of Kaelen's unique talent spread like wildfire through the adventuring guilds. Adventurers, tired of losing loot to unfair dungeon traps or receiving insufficient quest rewards, flocked to his office. He took on cases against greedy guild masters, against negligent quest givers, even against rogue elements of the city guard for unlawful detention, forcing a Tier 1 rogue to pay for a light finger. Skill was a particularly satisfying victory. His int and whis continued to soar. His exploit loophole skill allowed him to pick apart contracts and system directives with surgical precision, finding clauses that could be twisted to his client's advantage. His biggest case yet came from a distraught Tier 12 dragon hunter, named Sir Gareth, who had barely escaped the lair of the ancient red dragon Ignis, the Scorched. Sir Gareth's entire party had been wiped out, his legendary armor melted, and his quest failed. He's a menace. Unlicensed fire-breathing, destruction of public property, emotional distress, Sir Gareth raged. Kaelen initially hesitant to confront. A dragon looked at the quest contract for Slay Ignis, the Scorched. He used exploit loophole. Sir Gareth, Kaelen began. I noticed that this contract, issued by the Royal Adventuring Society, designates Ignis as a Class 5 ecological hazard. However, under Section 12, Subclause 3, Paragraph C, all Class 5 ecological hazards, for which a bounty is offered, must not actively extend their hazard zone beyond a 5-kilometer radius of their designated lair. Without explicit prior notification to the Adventuring Guild and local authorities, Sir Gareth frowned. He flew over the town, roasted a few market stalls. I saw him. Kaelen's eyes gleamed. Then he violated Environmental Hazard Ordinance 7 Omega. Therefore, the Royal Adventuring Society is liable for your damages, and Ignis himself is. Subject to a cease and desist order, system mandated, and a fine for public nuisance. Sir Gareth stared. You're going too, Dragon. We are going to file a class action lawsuit environmental damage against Ignis. By extension, the Royal Adventuring Society for negligence in monitoring a designated hazard, Kaelen corrected. Lyra, prepare the subpoenas. And make sure to cite Section 12, Subclause 3, Paragraph C very clearly. The system, once again, mandated an arbitration. This time it was a high court of jurisdiction environmental, with powerful Tier 8 judicator enforcers as arbiters. Ignis, the Scorched, was not pleased. He arrived in a furious rage, projecting a mental roar that shook the very foundations of the chamber. Mortal, you dare challenge Ignis? I am a force of nature. I am the scourge of the skies, Kaelen. His CHR, now impressive, he was learning to project calm legal authority, stood firm. Ignis, under Sentient Being Recognition Protocol, 4 Delta. You are afforded the same legal standing as any other intelligent entity. Therefore, you are subject to Environmental Hazard Ordinance 7 Omega. Your force of nature defense is inadmissible. Ignis roared, threatening to incinerate Kaelen. But the Judicator enforcers moved, their energy shields shimmering, ready to enforce system law. Even a dragon, no matter how ancient, could not defy the system's rulings without incurring catastrophic penalties. Ignis, though furious, was forced to comply. The Judicator enforcers threatened him with a deletion debuff minor, forced relocation. If he did not cease his outbursts, Kaelen systematically dismantled Ignis's defense, mostly angry roars and threats, citing clause after clause. He presented compelling evidence: melted market stalls, holographic projections, eyewitness testimony from terrified merchants, and even a detailed analysis of Ignis's flight path that proved his transgression of the 5-kilometer radius rule. System's verdict was swift and devastating. Verdict: guilty Ignis, the Scorched. Penalty: 500,000 gold fine, environmental damages. Permanent geographic restriction: Ignis's lair only. Cease and desist order: fire-breathing outside lair. The Royal Adventuring Society was also fined for negligence. Ignis, the Scorched, was defeated. Not by a mighty hero, but by a legal technicality. He roared, not in triumph, but in sheer, unadulterated outrage, as the system enforcers placed a geographic restraint debuff upon him, visibly shackling him to his mountain lair. New class designation: Tier 3, Grand Litigator. Kaelen Rep. Plus 5,000 Royal Adventuring Society. Minus 2,000 new skill. File injunction active. Description: allows the user to temporarily impose a restriction on a target or area, preventing specific actions. Very high mana cost. Requires strong legal justification. Kaelen was now a Grand Litigator. He had sued a dragon and won. But his rising power also earned him powerful enemies. The Royal Adventuring Society, humiliated and financially crippled, began to lobby the Archons, the supreme arbiters of system law, to have Kaelen's class revoked. They claimed he was abusing system mechanics and undermining the natural order of adventuring. The Archons' powerful Tier 10 system lords, who rarely interfered with mortal affairs, took notice. They saw Kaelen as a dangerous precedent, rogue element that threatened the very fabric of how Aerthos was supposed to function. They sent their own, terrifyingly powerful Archon Judicators Tier 10 to investigate. Kaelen knew this was different. He wasn't just fighting monsters or greedy guilds. He was fighting the system's fundamental interpretation of itself. He was challenging the very definition of justice in Lexia. Kaelen was summoned to the High Court of Archon Jurisdiction, a colossal, ethereal chamber where the very laws of Lexia were debated. The Archons, shimmering beings of pure data and legal code, sat in judgment. Archon Prime, the supreme arbiter, addressed Kaelen directly. Kaelen, Grand Litigator, you are accused of undue influence over system mechanics, abuse of legal protocols, and attempting to subvert the established order of adventuring. How do you plead? Not guilty, Your Honors, Kaelen replied, his voice firm despite the immense pressure. I merely uphold the system's own laws. If those laws lead to an outcome you dislike, then perhaps the flaw lies not with my advocacy but with the laws themselves. The Archons projected their cold, logical fury. You are a corrupter of purpose. Adventuring is about combat and challenge, not litigation. And yet, Kaelen retorted, Drawing upon his exploit loophole skill with all his might, the system itself provides the Litigator class. It provides the TCA. It provides the arbitration protocols. If this is not the intended function, then why are these functions coded into the system at all? Did you, the Archons, earn your initial design? Or are you simply unhappy with the logical conclusion of your own rules? This hit a nerve. The Archons were perfect. To admit an error in their foundational code was anathema. The very chamber hummed with their data frustration. Kaelen then presented his final argument. A bold, unprecedented use of his ultimate skill. Grand Injunction, active ultimate. He used it not against an individual, but against a core system. Mechanic, Your Honors, Kaelen announced. I move for a Grand Injunction against the concept of implicit adventuring risk acceptance as defined in Section 1. Subclause 1, Paragraph A of the TCA, on the grounds that it is overly broad, unconscionable, and unfairly shifts liability from negligent actors to unsuspecting adventurers. The Archons stared, their data forms flickering. He was trying to legally remove a core concept from the system. Warning. System core integrity threatened unprecedented legal challenge. High Judicator enforcers prepare for permanent deletion protocol. Kaelen knew this was it. He would either win or be erased. Asterisk, the High Adjudicator enforcers advanced, their blades humming with deletion energy. Kaelen, however, stood his ground. He had played by the system's rules, and now he was forcing the system to face its own internal logic. The Archons, after an agonizing silence, projected a final collective verdict. Verdict. Insufficient grounds for class revocation. Challenge to implicit adventuring risk acceptance is valid. System amendment required. Grand Injunction. Success. Implicit adventuring risk acceptance protocol. Deactivated. System recoding initiated. Adventuring Guild Protocols Revision 7.0. The High Judicator enforcers froze, then retracted their blades. The Archons, for the first time in their existence, had been legally outmaneuvered. Kaelen had not just won a case. It forced the system to rewrite its own laws. New class designation. Tier 4. Architect of Justice. Kaelen. Rep. Plus 10,000. System-wide judicial new ultimate skill. Systemic precedent active ultimate. Description. Allows the user to establish a new permanent legal precedent within the system's core code, fundamentally altering how certain rules are interpreted. Extremely high mana cost. Requires absolute legal justification and Archon oversight. Kaelen was now an architect of justice. It fundamentally altered how adventuring worked in Lexia. From that day forward, all quests had to include detailed safety warnings. Unmarked traps were grounds for massive lawsuits against quest givers, and adventurers were no longer expected to implicitly accept every risk. The world of Lexia became a fairer, if somewhat more bureaucratic place. His office, once a quiet refuge, became the nexus of systemic change. He advised the Archons on new legal frameworks, ensuring fairness and accountability. Lyra, his loyal paralegal, became his chief counsel. Her paralegal class evolving into chief systemic jurist. The Royal Adventuring Society, now bound by stricter regulations, was forced to adapt. They hated Kaelen, but they could not deny his power. Even Ignis, the Scorched, begrudgingly acknowledged Kaelen by sending him a cease and desist letter regarding a new, smaller, entirely legal lava flow within his lair. Asterisk years passed. Kaelen, the former struggling litigator, was now a venerable elder, his int and whist stats truly godlike. He had created an entire school of legal adventuring, teaching new litigators how to wield the system's own laws as their mightiest weapon. Lexia was no longer just a world of adventurers. It was a world of adventuring law. Quests were meticulously designed, contracts were rigorously reviewed, and justice, even for the smallest goblin, was a system-enforced reality. The ultimate lesson of Kaelen's journey was not about brute force or arcane power. It was about the fundamental power of the law, even in a fantastical, system-governed world. He had shown that true strength lay in understanding the rules, in finding the loopholes, and in fighting for fairness within the very framework of reality itself. Kaelen, in his final address to a new generation of architects of justice, spoke, not of monsters, but of responsibility. The system provides the rules, he stated, his voice resonating with the quiet authority of one who had literally rewritten reality, but it is your job to ensure those rules serve justice. Pen, the scroll, the claws, these are your weapons. Wield them wisely. The litigator class, once scorned, was now revered. They were the unsung heroes who ensured that the world of Lexia, despite its dangers, remained a place where even the weakest adventurer could find justice against the mightiest dragon, simply by understanding the system's own laws. For in Lexia, the greatest weapon was not a sword or a spell, but a meticulously crafted legal brief. And Kaelen, the personal injury lawyer, had given them that weapon.